Indeed. The CEO, of course, of Micron, where we currently sit in the headquarters of the research and development area here in the United States, in Idaho, Boise to be precise. And of course, we are talking about supply chain that has been upended through the COVID crisis. And now, indeed, we see potentially even Russia, Ukraine adding to some of those supply chain issues. Noble gas is key, of course, to the chip sector. We bring you an exclusive insight now into the semiconductor industry. And we kick off our conversation and our coverage in Boise, Idaho, with, of course, Micron Technology CEO. The company is the largest US maker of memory chips. Let's welcome Sanjay Mehrotra, President and CEO. Welcome to Bloomberg Television. And Sanjay, first and foremost, let's confront the elephant in the room that is Russia, Ukraine. How dependent is a company like Micron on the noble gases? Is the industry dependent on the noble gases?
So, Caroline, first of all, let me welcome you on behalf of the 6,000 team members here in Boise, Idaho, and the 43,000 team members that we have worldwide. Welcome you and Bloomberg team here in world's leading R&D facility in Boise, Idaho for semiconductor memory. Regarding your specific question on the supply chain concerns related to Ukraine for semiconductors, what I would like to point out is that for Micron, we have small part of our noble gases coming from Ukraine. And of course, we carry large inventory, but more importantly, we have multiple sources of supply. We have multiple sources from US, Europe, and Asia as well. And we have long-term contracts with those other suppliers as well. So while we continue to monitor the situation carefully and certainly hope that the situation will de-escalate, we believe, based on our analysis, current analysis, that our supply chain with respect to noble gases is in reasonable shape. And of course, we will continue to work with our suppliers to make sure that our supply goes uninterrupted. Having said that, I will tell you that semiconductor supply chain is highly complex, highly intertwined. And sometimes there can be other secondary suppliers of the suppliers. And these are the things that it's important that this situation de-escalate so that no surprises show up for anybody in the ecosystem.
Talk to us about the resiliency that you've had to build up in your own supply chain and whether there is light at the end of the tunnel, because so much of the global supply chain has been affected by semiconductors, and the fact that your supply chain was hit by the fact that certain manufacturing units had to shut within COVID, and the demand just spiked like many could never have anticipated. Is it getting better in 2022?
So with respect to our own supply chain operations during the period of COVID over the last 2 years, what has been demonstrated is that a lot of the work that we were doing pre-COVID as well, in terms of building redundancy in our supply chain, deep analytics, again, working on our suppliers and their suppliers, and making sure that we have capacity, all that work served us well. Of course, the COVID presented unprecedented level of challenges for everybody, and our teams were extremely agile and adaptive in terms of responding to those challenges. And I'm very proud of our global supply chain operations in how they tackled those and largely have been able to meet the demand sufficiently well and manage the mix and continuing to work with our suppliers. Regarding the current situation, what I would say is that when we were coming into the year, we certainly expected that supply chain shortages will continue to improve during the course of the year for non-memory components that we procure from other suppliers. While we see that many areas of those components, we are continuing to see improvements. In certain categories of those components, the rate of improvement is behind what we were hoping for. However, we will, of course, continuing to work with our suppliers, with our partners to have them increase our supply to meet the demand. So some of these supply chain shortages in the industry, these are phenomena that are common to the industry, I believe will continue to improve through the year in many areas, while they may continue to have challenges in certain other areas. And there's a lot of focus in the entire ecosystem on the part of the industry to continue to address these situations.
Because so many of the fabs have been running at full pelt. They needed to meet demand. And I think of NAND production that's recently been hit in the memory space by contamination within a US manufacturer. Do you think that these incidents might continue to occur, do you worry that prices actually, many felt prices would fall for chips coming into the end of the year? Will they actually rise, do you think?
So, Micron is a great example of world's leading semiconductor memory technology and production. What you're seeing here in this Boise site is world's leading R&D facility. And from here, we fuel new technologies that go into production at our sites worldwide, including in Japan, in Taiwan, in Singapore, and of course, here in the US as well. So what's important is to realize, that, with the example that you gave of other suppliers of NAND memory who have recently been hit with certain production challenges, what's important to realize is that, again, semiconductor production, as you saw in the tour today, is highly complex. Let me just give you an example. We produce several million wafers a year for our semiconductor memory and storage products. Our engineers are working around the clock, of course, with deep data analytics technologies involved as well, to, in a very paranoid, productively paranoid, and absolutely tremendous attention to detail to monitor many, many parameters. Let me just give you an example. We have about 230 million parameters that are being controlled, constantly monitored at all times in our production across the fabs. This is what is needed to absolutely make sure that the production runs uninterrupted, and our teams have done an amazing job in this regard.
What about your work with the government? I know you're a man who has been speaking to the Commerce Secretary, to the administration. They see the supply chain issues and they want to bring it closer to the home. They want to make sure manufacturing is back in the United States. They're offering about $50 billion, for example. Is that enough to make you build once again in the US even more? I know you're already in Virginia, you're expanding here where we sit, but will it make the US a powerhouse again?
Yeah. Micron is investing in terms of really building the future of memory. The leading edge technologies are being developed right here in this R&D facilities. Micron is leading with respect to DRAM and NAND technology. We are ahead in production with those most advanced technologies versus any other competitor. So really very proud of the work that gets produced here and is taken into production in other sites. I'm also highly appreciative of the work that President Biden's administration is doing. Secretary Raimondo is championing, and of course, having bipartisan support in Congress as well for securing the long-term leadership in semiconductor research, as well as bolstering semiconductor manufacturing here in the US through CHIPS Acts and investment tax credits. The $50 billion that you talked about is a good start, and we of course have to get it across the finish line, but then, in the longer term, more will have to be supported. It is critically important, just as COVID has shown, that we need to have resilient supply chain, diversified supply chain, and manufacturing footprint in the US would be important. We have announced a plan for more than $150 billion investments over 10 years.
But how much here?
In leading-edge R&D and manufacturing around the globe. And of course, what will be important is to have the necessary support from government to overcome the up to 45% cost difference that exists versus Asia production. And of course, Micron has been investing here in leading-edge R&D. I mean, this facility that you're seeing here and the tools, most advanced tools that will go into this facility to drive innovation forward will be quickly adding up to $1 billion here in the US itself. And we are investing at record level in CapEx in our fiscal year 22 around our global sites.